Hello, everybody, and welcome to another adventure in history. How's everybody doing? Hope everybody's doing well. DCI Banks, good to see you. KP, welcome in. The Lumpy, what's up? How's it going? Completely missed your stream last night. Saw that you were streaming, and I was like, oh, I should go check on Lumpy, and then didn't. Present. There is hope that bus service will resume next week. Well, that is good. I know that you all have been slammed by the old winter storm that hit basically everybody in the northern part of the continent here. So, yeah. Welcome in, everybody. It's Thursday. I don't know why we're looking at Australia. We're supposed to be looking at India. There we go. We could be looking at a puppy who has decided to saunter her way into the room and ask for butt scratches. Such a mess of a dog. She is basically right here expecting scratches. You fixed many things in real life this week and shipped a stressful project. I know that you had been going on some big stuff that you had sort of taken over, and then clients and things and lots of expectation and sudden stuff. So I'm glad to hear that things have leveled out. I know that you have been hanging out with Muffin for quite a bit, which is positive news. What are you doing, Kaylee? You just want some attention? I'm talking to the magical light box here, and I'm not paying attention to the puppy. Rotten thing. I'm very tired today. I don't really know why. I didn't sleep very well Wednesday night. But I guess I slept okay last night. But I don't know. I'm just very tired today. Not a lot of energy. Hopefully I'll perk up as we go on and drink some caffeine and be my normal rousing self. But hope everybody's doing well. And I'm actually fairly excited about stuff tonight. There's lots of cool things to look at. I like Indian history a lot, and it's got a lot of really fascinating stuff. The problem that most people sort of run into when approaching history of the subcontinent of India is that it seems very obdurate when it comes to trying to understand what's going on, right? It seems that there are these really difficult terms, and the countries and the leaders are all very, very hard to sort of get into perspective. Lots of syllables, and some of this, of course, is because we're in the West mostly not exposed to a lot of history of India, and part of this is because there's just a sort of language barrier between any history, especially linguistically, when you're trying to learn people's names and learn the names of empires and kingdoms, etc. The most interesting thing about Indian history is how they break into song and dance every 5 minutes. That's fair. I've seen several movies that seem to indicate that is the case. I've also come to believe that there's a whole bunch of random shootouts and car chases through the big cities. So maybe I've seen too many action movies and Bollywood song and dance numbers. So perhaps I'm a bit inclined. I do like Indian food. I'd love to go to India. I was actually talking to my wife about this before we came on stream. It'd be really cool to go travel to India. There's a lot of places that I would like to go. The issue with going to India is that it's very, very large, and there's a lot of stuff there. So where do you go? how do you even begin to plan a trip to India? You can't really see all of it in one trip. You'd spend a year over there, right? So you sort of have to pick a location that you're going to go and fly probably in and out of the same city and just make a big loop and see as much stuff as you can in that area, and then do it 7 or 8 more times to get all the rest of the stuff. And unfortunately, a lot of the stuff that I would want to really go see is in areas that are particularly unstable. There's a lot of stuff, especially around the Kashmir region and the border here with Pakistan, that is not likely to be super safe for travel. So probably not something that I would go to without lots of local guides and assurances of safety. I'd also love to go to Pakistan and Afghanistan, but we all know that Shane likes to travel. Yeah, just 2 more people, just myself and my wife, right? You once considered working in India, and Muffin said, "Don't go; they'll only pay you." Oh, I would suspect though, Lumpy, that if you got there and started eating stuff, you would figure out the specific things that you could eat that wouldn't make you upset at the stomach. There's a very wide variety of Indian food, and the Indian food that we typically eat here in America has, to a certain extent, been anglicized, and in a lot of places, it's not nearly as spicy as they put it in. So America has this fascination with like super spicy food, right? And especially lately, we've been going through a kick of just this "I want to burn" kind of thing, where I saw something the other day that was Cinnamon Toast Crunch mixed with spicy stuff. It was like Cinnamon Fuego Crunch or something like that. And I don't know why, other than it's a fad. And you spent 12 months in Hong Kong, and well, there we go. There you go. So maybe there wouldn't be something good over there for you. I don't know. That's unfortunate, Lumpy. I would love to have Hong Kong food for a year. Because pain tastes good. What's up, Green Herring? I don't know why, KP. I don't know why. Other than, everything has got to be a fuego now, right? Jalapeno soup was not a functional food item. I really like jalapenos. I like spicy food though, so I'm very odd in that area. Shane likes his chicken spicy. Anyway, so let's kind of launch into the discussion, and we'll get into some India talk. And I have to start with explaining why in the last phase of our move through the world, we didn't talk about India. So when we were looking at stuff in the 700 to 800 year range, we didn't talk about India. And there's sort of a reason for that. The biggest reason is easily shown by showing you the map. So this is what the map of India looks like around the year 700. And you can tell there's a lot of stuff going on here. There are a lot of different groups. There are a lot of different countries, and just trying to even cover this in some sort of broad spectrum is going to be a difficult thing. Also, one of the reasons we didn't cover India during the 700s is that around the middle part of the 700s, there's going to be a very large war that starts, and it stretches well into the 800s. And I figured it would be a bad idea to cover half of a war and end up with a partial stream where I could cover the entire war subsequent, and also talk about a lot of the culture of the area coming back through in the 800s. So that was my logic behind that. I know that some people get excited because they know that certain episodes are going to come up. Like I know that there are people that have already asked about the Byzantines this phase. There have been people that have already asked about the Vikings from this phase. So I know that people look forward to certain ones. So if you are a fan of India and you were wondering why we didn't talk about India last time, this is part of the reason. There are about 20 different political units in India during the 700s, and it is very difficult to tell who's really where and what's going on. Now, a few things here. We do have several what we might call large states, like Magadha here, and the Chalukyas here, and Gujaratra up here. So they're fairly large chunks of territory. Chalukyas have been around for a while. We've talked about them multiple times on stream. We've talked about Magadha before, but we're going to set the stage a little bit for our big war, and then we'll have a big war, and we'll sort of see what ends up happening here. So, first off, we have to prepare for this period of time. So this region of time is typically referred to as the tripartite struggle period of India. So clearly we've got, three big chunks. And they're all sort of after this one MacGuffin, which just happens to be the city of Kannauj. So everybody wants to control Kannauj. And there's a reason for that. If we look at why the city is important to begin with, it started off as the capital city of a fairly important country under a guy named Yajavarman I. So Yajavarman is going to found a country in Kannauj. We don't really know how big it is. There's a lot of mixing of boundaries and cultures and peoples. Where is Kannauj? Good question. Here we go. So this is the Varman territory. And if we look ahead a little bit to right here, we can see Kannauj is right here. Nope. Yep. Nope. There we go. It's sort of northern central India, but it was part of this larger. I mean, it's this right here, Kannauj-erie. Same difference basically. Is that the name of the modern city? Well, that's a great question. The modern city is quite different. This is another problem with studying modern history, because there is a modern city called Kannauj, and it is still more or less the modern city, but the Kannauj is actually the modern name for it. The ancient name for it is Kannauj-erie, and this is where things get really kind of confusing, because it was also known as Maodaya, and depending on who's writing the story and whose documents, you can see one of the three different names. So I just decided, and most historians have sort of agreed with this, that we're going to just call it Kannauj, and we're going to know that Kannauj-erie is Kannauj, pretty much, and we're also going to know that Maodaya is Kannauj, pretty much. But the footprints of the cities don't directly overlap completely. And I know that's kind of crazy, but with history in India, there are so many different cultures that overlap. You end up with lots of different names for the same place. Yeah, come on, India, try to keep up with modern attention spans. Right, we need something with one syllable that's called the same thing forever. So, yeah, I mean, it's like I said, when you start studying Indian history, it can seem a little bit stubborn, where you're like, wait, but I thought that was this, and you're like, oh well, it is that, and it is that, and it's okay to call it that too, but like, but like, what did they call it back then? And you're like, what do you mean back then? Like, when back then? Like, what time period back then? um, because if you want to get really crazy about it, there's a period of time in some of the Buddhist writings from way back in the day that it's called Kushtas was it Kushta Kashustala? Yeah, or something like that. Kushastala, that's what it is. So I mean, it's got like 5 different names. Right? Is there still well preserved forest in India? Oh yeah, absolutely. Rome has always been Rome. I mean, kind of. That's fair, but we'll just call it Kannauj. All the time periods and commas back then, right? And the time semicolons, those are especially annoying. But anyway, so right here, Kannauj-erie, same thing, but this is the Varman territory, maybe. So again, we don't exactly know where Yajavarman was ruling. We just know that he had some sort of territory here in the early 700s. So we don't actually know exactly the year that he was ruling. We don't know 100% about all of the places that he claimed. Did he actually rule in these places, or did he just say that he beat them up? So the map that we're looking at right now, basically what I'm trying to say is it's fairly speculative, and we don't necessarily know whether or not Yajavarman had any of that stuff. We don't even necessarily know a lot about where he was. We kind of know that he exists mostly because of stuff that was written after him. There are a couple of coins that have that seem to have his imprint on them, but it's tough to say a lot of stuff at this time period. We do know that Yajavarman and the initial Varman territory, and specifically the city of Kannauj, is very important for the Jain religion. And most of the documents that we have that talk about this period, specifically about Yajavarman and his subsequent family members. Dun 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 dun. Mr. Crunchy, thank you so much for that follow. Mr. Krusty, not Crunchy. My little window here is very small. Mr. Krusty, thanks so much for the follow, and welcome to the adventure. Hope you're doing well. I'm tempted to make a COVID-19 joke, considering how many Sikh people there are over there, but I think you'll leave the Punjab for another time. Yeah. Beat them up. I thought India would be more peaceful considering the lack of beef. They got plenty of beef. They just don't eat it. Were they still riding on birch bark back at this time? Yes, birch bark and palm leaves. Palm leaves had sort of taken over the birch bark thing, and they had sort of made a version of papyrus that was kind of based on palm fronds instead. The birch bark stuff is still around a little bit. It's not widely used anymore. That they kind of had exposure to other documentation methods, and I mean, it's still being used, but the palm frond stuff, quasi papyrus, is catching on a lot, and it won't be too much longer before they start getting like actual understanding of paper stuff, and that's mostly going to come from China. It doesn't belong in a museum. I mean, why not? What are you doing? The dog is just kind of freaking out over here. What are you doing? Do you want to come see me? Well, come here. Come here. You're going to be silly now? Well, come here. You got to stretch your little butt out. Come here. Come up here. Come up here. Come on. Come on. Yes, there's the puppy. Hello. What are you doing? Are you going to leave now? Is that all that you wanted? You just wanted to give me like 2 sugars and then leave? Whatever. She's a nut. Anyway. Yajavarman. what's up with him? Does he exist? We really don't know. Well, I mean, he probably did. Was he the way that we have him described in history? That's a different question. We don't really know a lot about this time period. Now, we do know that the Varman dynasty was around for a little while. It is quite frequent, though, for dynasties that last longer than 1 or 2 generations to sort of make histories for themselves that establish my lineage, and I'm ruling this area that my grandfather ruled. That's a pretty common trope in the ancient world. So we all know that there was some political group here. They were definitely ruled by a group of people that were referred to as the Varman dynasty, and they definitely did have a big power base at Kannauj, and then they go away. And this is somewhere in the middle part of the 700s, or maybe the early part of the 800s, because, again, very sketchy. We're not sure. The puppy needs an adorable hat. Oh, my gosh. The puppy's a her, and she hates headgear. We occasionally try to put stuff on her. So the original puppy emote, the Puppy of War emote, is her wearing this little unicorn headdress that was my niece's, or is my niece's, I don't know. And that particular frame encompasses the entire second and a half that she actually wore that before she decided that it was horrible and wanted to let go of it. So, why is there such a large population in India and China? Why is there such large populations in India and China? Is that connected in sociological factors? It's mostly just because the areas can control a lot of natural resources. You have to have ability to feed those people to have that population. And we've also got to remember that China and India are both some of the earliest civilizations that have ever come around, like the Harappan people in India, and some of the original Yellow River and Yangtze River cultures in China were some of the first people that built cities in the first place. So they've had a long time to develop population centers, and long time to let those populations grow. And it's also fair to note that, especially in China, they lost almost 500 million people to Mao back in the 1900s. So they're not even where their population growth would have been had Mao not happened, right? There's not really anything that we might call like a sociological link between the two, but their culture is very family oriented. Children are considered to be, generally positive, and they tend to have big families. So there's no one thing that's causing this. It's just similarities and parallels. But population density is a lot higher in China and in India than it is in a lot of places in the United States. And that's sort of where we get this disconnect. Like, oh, those are just places that have 1 billion plus people. So it's also, oh yeah, absolutely, Lumpy. That was why I did it. People ask, and then I like to be able to deliver. Anyway, so Yajavarman ends up dying, but Kannauj is still around. Boop. They also don't enter the demographic transition until like the 1970s. Well, that's also when Mao left. Not to like make it all about my point, but the 70s is when Mao left. So once they got rid of a crazy dictator that was killing tens of millions of them, or hundreds of millions of them, their population kind of exploded. It's crazy what happens when you allow people a little bit of freedom, right? So that's Kannauj, and the thing is, when the Yajavarman or the Varman dynasty falls apart, it leaves a big power gap, right? This sort of vacuum, and we all know that nature and puppies abhor a vacuum, right? So what's going to end up happening is that Kannauj sort of becomes this, I don't know, like this jewel that everybody wants to put in their crown, right? And we're going to see some fairly rapid development that happens around the same time, especially in 3 big parts of of India, and one of them is, well. So here's how we're going to do this. We're going to talk about where these three groups come from, and then we'll talk about what happened with the three groups, and then we'll talk a little bit about the culture of the three groups, if that makes any sense. It's statements like that which makes me wonder why you don't want to go to China. Well, I mean, I'd love to go to China. I just don't want to end up in a Chinese prison because they wouldn't be nice to me. So, first off, Gurjara Pratihara. And you're like, what the devil is that? Well, this is a kingdom. And it was originally founded by a guy named Nagabhata. Specifically, Nagabhata the First. Now, who is this guy, and why is it such a big deal, and why is it important? Well, Nagabhata originally has a power base in this city called Ujjain, and he's going to start expanding out of this. And his territory in Gurjara Pratihara is going to end up taking up most of what is this sort of what we might call northwestern chunk right here of India. And he is going to end up being the one that manages to hold on to Kannauj to begin with. And this is a fairly important moment because this is kind of like, hey, look, I'm the guy. I managed to take over the territory. I'm going to incorporate Kannauj into my country. Therefore, I am cool and I am big and I am powerful. And this guy actually does seem to be a pretty big deal. And we have a couple of different interesting sources here that talk about him, including some that are from outside of India. Because it looks like at some point during this time, there was at least one, perhaps even two, attempts at invasion of India by Muslim forces that were coming out of Central Asia and trying to come over into India. Now, this is a fairly momentous occasion, right? Islam was expanded very rapidly. This was still under the Umayyad Caliphate, so back in the earlier parts of the 700s, or I guess the middle parts of the 700s. And had Nagabhata not managed to fight them off, this could have been a dramatic cultural shift in Indian politics and Indian culture and religion, because Islam, of course, was expanding very, very rapidly and was making a lot of converts, and there had already been some converts to Islam, especially here in this region right here, which is broadly referred to as the Sindh, Sindh, which is pretty much in modern-day Pakistan, up in the region of Punjab here. There had already been some converts to Islam, so had Islam managed to get down into, southern or central India, or over here into eastern India, that could have been really, really, really big. So the Mughals weren't even around at this point. So we're talking right now about a period of time that's around 730 Common Era to about 760 or so Common Era. The Mughals weren't really going to take power until about 600 or so years later on. So this is really, really early in Islamic history. So this is even before Islam really gets a toehold in India. But even that's quite earlier than the Mughal Empire, because before you have the Mughals, you end up having you have the Ghaznavids first, and you have the Ghurids, then you have the Timurids, and then you end up with the Sultan of Delhi. So there are lots of ruling Islamic governments in India prior to the Mughals. So imagine growing up dyslexic in India. That'd be pretty rough. Though I don't know, their script is very different. So depending on what script you're looking at, dyslexia might be easier or more difficult to handle. Due to the population density, I've considered opening up a women's clothing store in India carrying half Western, half Eastern clothing. And yes, I made you read that out for the sake of a joke. Sorry, not sorry. Is that the name of your shop? Sorry, not sorry. Uh, road trip to Partihara. Yeah, exactly. Um, so you cover both Western and yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is not too long after Muhammad died. I know some Arabic, and it's really nice uh, writing left-handed. See, I mean, because of the way that it's written across the page, right? So you don't have to drag your hand across everything that you've already written because you get to write it this way with your left hand, right? I know this because I had a friend that was left-handed in college, and he would just have these like ink stains and like if he was writing in a pencil, like the graphite would be all over his hand. Like, oh, this is how it feels, right? So, Maddie, you should just pick up something like a Semitic language or an Arabic language that's written. I don't know how that goes, but I can only imagine that it's frustrating. So I apologize for being right-handed and there being a lot of discrimination against left-handed people. uh, so Nagavada, he is going to take over a large group of territories, and he's going to expand all the way up to the Tibetan border in some places. So this guy's pretty big, and I say that because Tibet at this time was very, very large, and there does seem to be some dealings between the Pratiharas and the Tibetans, to the extent that we don't really know exactly what's going around. But it does look like they have some conversations between the two of them. Left to right writing systems is all fun and games until you try rewriting a text process in English. Yeah, that sounds tough. Blame genetics. Yeah, well, some of that is also taught. Like, even if you are left-handed, you can be taught to write with your right hand, and vice versa. I'm somewhat difficult with this because I am nominally right-handed, but my left eye is my dominant eye. So when I do stuff like when I started learning how to play drums, it didn't feel correct playing it right-handed, and I just had to suffer through it because I would rather play it left-handed. But to do that, you'd have to basically like set up your drum kit differently, and I didn't have a drum kit, and it got sick of like moving everything around to the other side, so I just played it right-handed. Like swinging a baseball bat or kicking a soccer ball, I do that left-handed. Shooting a gun, I shoot left-handed. But writing, I do right-handed, and like I brush my teeth with my right hand, so it's weird. I have a little bit of the left hand stuff going, but I don't write with my left hand, so there's that. So okay, Pratihara, and they're usually referred to as Pratihara historically speaking. So we're not necessarily going to go all the way through and say Gujra Pratihara every single time. You're playing soccer wrong if you're using your hands. It's feet only. Yes, I kick with my left foot, right? In Ireland, we write with my left foot. Well, it's not a bad movie, and it's one of the first ones that I saw Daniel Day-Lewis in, and that dude's a good actor. A bit scary with the method acting stuff, but I don't know if I can fault his process if that's his product. At least he's not as bad as someone like Jared Leto, who kind of goes over the line. Like, you know, I was the Joker and I sent people dead rats. Yeah, let's not do that. Boom. All right, so there's one of our three groups. One of the three. Now, what about a group called the Pala Empire? Well, there's a guy whose name is Gopala. And Gopala is a ruler, and he was in a period of time where things were kind of crazy. And specifically, he's going to be over here in the eastern part of India, around the Bay of Bengal, and over here in the Ganges River Delta. And during this time period after the collapse of the Varman dynasty, there was basically chaos. and there are a whole bunch of people fighting, and there are a whole bunch of people claiming political power, and there's all sorts of feuds and disputes and assassinations and backstabbing things. There's also alliances and intermarriage and all this stuff that's trying to like build strategic dynasties and things of this nature. But it was really, really chaotic. And the story goes, and I have to emphasize here, the story and the legend goes that Gopala was recognized as such a fit and proper ruler that he got elected to be king by all of the people, right? Like, everybody just looked at this guy and they were like, he can lead us to peace and unity, so we elect him king. Now, this almost certainly did not happen. This is probably going to hold some element of what we might call like a kernel of truth, maybe, where he managed to put together a fairly broad alliance of people that agreed to follow one direction, that we're all going to kind of go with this guy because he seems to have some success and he's making things more peaceful by conquering territory. But he's not really going to have some election where he sits down. Yeah, Alex Shane. Dude, I would totally be Chancellor of Twitch. I would absolutely take that job. I would work at that job for like maybe 1 year and get paid like $30 or $40 million for it, and I would put all of that money in the bank and live off of the interest every year, right? It was the assassinations of times. It was the backstabbings of times, right? Lots of fighting going on in this area. So another thing that contributed to the collapse of this region was the Varman dynasty, when it collapsed, had also destabilized the Magadha dynasty, which was over here, and this area was used to sort of having a central power, and then it didn't have one, and everybody was just at each other's throats, right? What's up, Nover? How's it going? Hope you're having a good day, my friend. Tanker, I don't think I said hello to you. Hello, Tanker. What's going on? All right, so the Pala Empire. What's up with these guys, though? Anyway, there's not really a clear winner during this time except for Gopala. And the Pala Empire is going to slowly but steadily begin to push towards expansion. So now we've got 2 of the 3. Things are okay. Hope it was all as well. I was very tired at the beginning of stream. I'm starting to wake up a little bit, kind of get going, get the old history juices flowing. I'll probably crash pretty hard after stream, but I'm not doing bad. I'm just kind of tired, right? Nothing like a vacuum to inspire assassinations and backstabbing. Yeah, I mean, it's for real. It's the truth. All right. Our next player, player 3, has entered the game. This is the Empire of Rashtrakuta. And you're like, wait, what now? Rashtrakuta. I know. And specifically, we're going to be talking about the guy that puts this together, and his name is Dante Durga. So the Rashtrakuta Empire and its founder, Dante Durga. So they are going to be down in this southern central part of India, specifically here on this big plateau, which is called the Decca Plateau, or the Deccan, right? So this region had been geographically separate from North India for a long time, and the territory itself makes it difficult to invade this region. And if you look at a lot of boundaries in the ancient world in India, this region right here typically has natural boundaries that line up. Like if we go back to our map here of the Chulukas, you can see like that's kind of the boundary. That's the boundary of the Decca, right? If we fast forward a little bit, we're going to see here that the boundary of Rashtrakuta is the Decca, right? So this is a very kind of natural boundary that keeps people from moving around a lot. It's very, very rugged, and it's hard to move into it and out of it. But anyway, the Rashtrakuta Empire is going to start down here. Danti Durga is going to start with a small power base, but begin to expand at the expense rather of the Chalukya group, and specifically here, he's going to start off as what is kind of nominally a vassal of the Chalukyas, and he's going to end up basically just going ahead and declaring himself independent by about 753. And he's going to start expanding, and he has an eye on Kannauj, just like the Pala do. But he seems to be the one that really sets off the next big phase, which is going to be the actual tripartite struggle, because Danti Durga decides that he wants Kannauj for himself to really establish his empire. Because, you know, if you're a new polity and you're trying to really make your mark on the world, it's nice to have big victories so that you can claim legitimacy. And he thinks that Kannauj is kind of the thing, right? If I can just go get this city, it is kind of like, again, the jewel in my crown. So he's going to invade into our Pratihara territory, and he and Nagabhata probably had a battle against each other. If it wasn't Nagabhata, it was Nagabhata's son. But he's going to lose, and Pratihara is going to be able to hold on to the territory. But this sets off a really crazy time, and this period from the middle 700s to the late 800s, or sorry, the middle 800s again, is called the tripartite struggle for Kannauj. And I've got ourselves a neat little map here. So here are our three players. We've got the Pratihara, we've got the Palas, and we've got the Rashtrakutas. And everybody's after Kannauj. And you can see here that at various times, each one of them is going to hold it. Now, to save everybody as much headache as possible, and to just sort of admit that this period of time is very difficult to describe in what we might call a clear narrative due to lack of sources, we're going to kind of skim over this a little bit. And basically what we're going to say is the city of Kannauj gets captured by all of them. Yeah, let them fight, pretty much. This southern invasion by the Rashtrakuta is going to be very damaging to the Pratihara. Rashtrakuta is actually going to manage to take Kannauj for a bit. That's going to weaken Pratihara and also Rashtrakuta because of the projection of power. Palas is going to come over and take the city for a little while. And basically, they're going to beat the junk out of each other for about 120 years. Why is Kannauj so important? It's a big trade city. And when Yajavarman set up his dynasty way back in the early 700s, he had tied a ton of really broad trade networks together, and it was making a whole bunch of money. This is a period of time where India was getting more aware of external economic forces. They were sort of moving towards more unity, and part of the reason they were moving towards more unity was because people had figured out how to tap into these larger trade networks. And the trade coming out of Central Asia at this time, coming off of, you know, our good old-fashioned Silk Road, was getting down into this northern part of India and was making a lot of people a lot of money. And the designation that Kannauj was going to be sort of the capital city where all of this trade was going to flow made it a very strategically important location for money, but it also had that prestige level, right? Like, if you're going to be a good empire and you're going to have, you know, the capital city. This is similar to when, you know, we have the Western Roman Empire collapsing and all of the different barbarian tribes trying to take the city of Rome, because that was the symbol of destiny, right? Like, I have achieved power because I have taken Rome, even when Rome didn't necessarily have the same oomph that it used to. This is similar when you look at the various dynasties in China where they've moved their capital around so much that there are about 4 cities that sort of have that imperial prestige, right? Like Woyong and Anyang and Chengdu. If you can get one of those cities, because you have it, is going to give you some sort of prestige bump. Yeah, it's an endowed chair position, right? That's exactly right. Right. It's a lasting legacy of your enduring power, right? So, and we'll see this happen a little bit in the next stream when we're talking about the Abbasids fighting against people that are breaking away from them. Because if you are a Muslim and you get to hold the cities of Mecca and Medina, you get to make a claim to legitimacy that a lot of people don't get, right? Like, I have the cities of the Prophet. Kannauj cum laude. Right? Exactly. So this is like the top prize. If you're going to be a legitimate empire in India, you want Kannauj, right? You just want it because it's going to make you look really good. You're also going to benefit from the money. Let's not take it away that you're going to get a crap ton of money from this, right? A crap ton of money. Because of the trade networks that are going to happen when you get attached to this. Anyway, long story short, we're fighting and things are going pretty bad. All 3 of the countries are going to beat each other to a bloody pulp, and the wars that are fought here are very, very damaging. The death tolls are very high, and all 3 of the empires are at various times sort of equivalent to the other 2. You'll have periods where one will get very powerful and they'll end up taking the city, and then overextension will cause them to get weak, and then one of the others will take it, and then one of the other ones will take it, and the city trades hands 5 or 6 different times during this again 100+ year long war that goes on between these 3 empires. But eventually, the winner of the tripartite struggle is our friends, the Pratiharas. And by the time we get to the end of the struggle, things are going to look a lot different when it comes to what's going on, because we sort of end and everybody's kind of happy, like, right, cool, we're going to be great, we're going to be powerful. And then Paula kind of takes it back because the war had kind of calmed down a little bit, and everybody's like, all right, we're done. And by the time we get to the end, like the year 800, Paula is going to make like a Hail Mary thing, and they're going to end up taking the city. So by the time we get to the year 800, this is kind of where we are. And we think, all right, everything's going to be cool now. Now we're going to be cool. And things calm down a little bit. And then it kicks back up again. So there are like about 4 different main phases of violence over this period of time. So lots of violence, and Pratihara looks like they've got it. And then we calm down for a little bit. And Apollo takes it back, and then we calm down a little bit. And the guy that's really going to kind of end this and bring Kannauj back home, if you will, is a guy... Wait a second here. I've done that thing again where I've clicked around. Anyway, so the one way or the other, Pratihara is going to end up winning out. And can't we all just get so wrong? So what's going on after that? Well, we've got another 50 years of history, and there's some stuff that goes on here that's pretty interesting, and this is kind of after the tripartite struggle, but also kind of related to it. A guy named Mahira Bhoja, and he is going to be kind of like the last... Well, not the last, but he's going to be one of the really big rulers of the Pratiharas. And this guy is going to sort of establish the legitimacy of Pratihara and the primacy of Pratihara in the region, and he's going to be the beginning of the end for the Pala. Because when it comes down to it, Pratihara decides we're going to take everything. And we're not going to sit back and wait for this to happen anymore. Pala, you had your shot at things, but he's going to start expanding eastward. He's going to take a whole bunch of territory. He's going to also expand southward. He's going to try to break into the Decca Plateau, and he's going to take some land down there, but he's not going to be successful at holding on to it forever. But he's also going to start expanding north because he's following sort of the trade backwards, right? From Kannauj back up towards Central Asia, and realizes, hey, there are other trade cities up this way. So if we want to hold on to the trade route, we might as well keep the whole trade route going, and we can take over more of it. We all know that taking over more of the trade cities means you get more money. And he's fairly successful. He moves all the way over into the Indus River Valley, and he's going to be a very long-reigned king. He takes over in 836, and he's going to rule until 885. So this guy is a really, really big deal. And he's going to start what is kind of like the Pratiharan primacy of northern India for about the next 100 years or so. He's a really important ruler, and he's going to really kind of put his foot down and say, we win. So if we look at what our map looks like, by the time we get to 900, not Mihira Bhoja himself, but one of the subsequent rulers in the Pratihara line is going to pretty much wipe Pala out. Now, I will say this. I'm going to show you this map, but it's not completely accurate because this is a map that's supposed to be of the 900 CE mark, but it doesn't have Pala on it. And there's a reason for that. Archaeology has recently shown fairly conclusively that the Pratihara did not completely wipe out the Pala, that they held on to a little territory basically around over this region. So this map is not 100% accurate. It's just the best one that I could find. It's hard to find good maps these days, right? But it looks like on this map, you can see that Pratihara has expanded quite a bit. And again, a big portion of this is because of Mihira Bhoja, who decided, I'm going to end this once and for all by conquering everybody else. Now, things are going to be different, of course, just a little bit later, but we still have our Rashtrakuta dynasty here. You can still see that they had a little bit of land going up towards Kannauj, but not as much as they used to. Also, I want to call out this little group down here, the Chola, because they're about to be really, really important. So let's talk about them for just a second before we get into the cultural phase. Vijayalaya, yeah, this guy is the founder of the Chola dynasty. Chickachericola, yeah. I could see the corner of that delicious orange drink kingdom. What? Oh, the Tang dynasty? Okay, yeah. Not Cholos, the Chola. The Chola are a Tamil group that's down in southern part of India at this time. And they're going to be led by Vijayalaya. And he started off sort of involved in this a little bit, maybe as a vassal of one of these larger kingdoms, perhaps the Pallava. But we're not completely sure how he gets into power, but we know that he is going to establish a territory which is basically this chunk of South India right here as his territory. Now, the reason I mention this particularly is because in the next couple of 100 years, the Chola are going to turn into one of the biggest trading empires on Earth. And they start sort of with little humble beginnings down here. But by the time we get to the late 800s, they're on the map. and they're going to expand very, very rapidly. So I wanted to give them recognition where they come in and let everybody know, because I know that everybody remembers all of this material that we cover from week to week, that the next time we get to India, these guys are going to be a lot more important. A lot more important. Chickacherry, that's... I don't even try to explain that. I'll just hold on tight, right? And if it happens again, I'll move so slightly. That's from a pretty great song from the 90s that I really liked. Savage Garden, I Want You. I had that album, and I loaned it to my sister because she really enjoyed it, and she never gave it back to me. So I don't have that CD anymore. But I like Savage Garden. I know that they got a lot of flack, but I thought they were pretty good. I thought they were pretty cool stuff. Savage Garden. That comes from... there's a comedy duo that sings music. It's Chris Hardwick and Mark Furman, but they go by the musical name Hard and Firm. And I don't know if you all have ever heard of any of their music. But they have one song that's... it's called Love Song, I think, but it's making fun of songs about love, and it's pretty funny. Anyway, now, what up with the culture? Because I've shown you a whole bunch of maps, but I haven't really shown you a whole bunch of cool stuff. So let's talk about cultural stuff. And we'll start with our guys, the Pratihara. What were they like culturally speaking? Well, they were predominantly Hindu on the ruling class, right? So the dynasty that's ruling the Pratihara were Hindu. But they actually had a fairly wide variety of religions among them. So they had a lot of Jains, a lot of Buddhists, and again, they're going to be the biggest sort of territory close to Islam. So they're going to start having some Islamic converts. Now, this is not really big at the time. Islam is not necessarily going to break all the way into this area for about another 80, 100-ish years. But there are going to be some people, especially along these trade routes, because let's remember that some of the people that are going to be moving along these trade routes come from other countries, right? They're going to be people that come from outside, and they're bringing goods inside. So they're going to be bringing ideas and their religion with them. So in the big cities, you're going to start seeing individuals that might identify as Islamic. This doesn't mean that they're building mosques everywhere. This doesn't mean that it's a big population, but there are going to be some people, especially in the Pratihara territory. Their artistic style is pretty interesting. They get really, really deep into building or into making these really detailed sculptures, and specifically sculptures that are I don't know if Lumpy is still around, but Pratihara sculpture is sort of very stylistic and suggestive. So here is a fairly famous... and Lumpy's like, wait, what now? So here's a statue of Shiva, who is seducing a young lady here. This is a moment from mythological history. You can see here that we have other deities sort of hanging around. Here's Ganesha down here in the bottom corner, the human body with the elephant head. I always like to point out Ganesha. But Lumpy, this might be a little bit more towards the style of sculpture that you would like here. So this is a specific type of figure here called a Surasundari, which is literally like a seductively posed woman. And she's not naked, but she's almost naked. And this is actually carved onto a temple, right? That looks almost... Yeah, she's not naked, but she's got all of her parts covered, so Twitch can't TOS me. Also, this is art, right? But you see a lot of this kind of stuff going on in their world. So Pratihara sculpture is very lifelike and can get rather rather scandalous. Yeah, that's a good word for it. So kind of like, ooh, really? So Shiva and Parvati, if you want to look up that particular so Surasundari is the particular form of sculpture where you do the sort of very suggestive woman. And that particular statue or that particular frieze of sculpture is at a temple monument that's called Khajuraho. Khajuraho. Yeah, like that. No, it's it's like that. Yeah, only one K, and it's got an H. Khajuraho. Yeah, that's it. That's it. So, if you want to look that stuff up, Lumpy, you can add that to your list of potentially scandalous sculpture. Who has the most scandalous art in history? India is up there. Let's not forget that they came up with the Kama Sutra, right? That's a creation of India, and they had illustrated Kama Sutras all the way back at this time period. Well, I don't know if they had it all the way back at this time period. Admission of ignorance. I don't actually know when the Kama Sutra was compiled. That'd be an interesting question that I don't know the answer to. Yeah, you broke your back because you're getting like your hips and your rear end and your bosom in the picture, because that's the only way that you can turn around to break your back. But specifically, Noger, I don't know if you've been around long enough to remember or have encountered Moche pottery. The Moche were a group of people that lived in South America, specifically this Andean region right around here, all the way up until about the 700s of the current era. So they had a good stretch of time, or about 400 years, right around here. But if you look up Moche pottery specifically, they get pretty scandalous. Pretty scandalous. That needs a Hawkeye project update. I'm not sure exactly what you mean there. Well, I mean, it's okay to appreciate scandalous art or lewd art. The only reason why it's considered lewd is because especially Western people are so caught up on the idea that people are never naked, right? Like, there are a lot of people, especially in the West, that are so prudish that they sort of just, I guess, pretend like people are never naked, and that the human form is not designed to turn men on, right? Men are visually stimulated creatures, and the human form does that, right? Andean. Is there any reason for scandalous art beyond horny artists? There's a glorification of the human form, and I mean, this is the same thing that happens in a lot of different places, like, Greece or Greek sculpture and Roman sculpture. They really appreciate the human body, and especially in the Greek world, and even especially over here in the Indian world, right? There's an understanding that the body is mathematically derived, and you can do a whole bunch of stuff with ratios, like the distance between one knuckle and the next, and the difference between the fingers to the hand, and then the hand to the forearm, and the forearm to the upper arm. And there's a mathematical precision to a lot of this stuff, and showing off your skills at making a really beautiful piece of art that just happens to be a body. It's like, it's part of the thing, right? So, I'm sure that part of it is, holy crap, that's a good looking figure, but also it's we can't assume that everybody in the ancient world was, again, as prudish as kind of modern Western culture is. So people back then probably saw naked people a lot more frequently than we do. It's considered very shameful to be naked in our world, and back then, it's just not the same in a lot of places. Yeah, peepees and bobas aplenty, right? Everyone watching the stream is naked. We're all naked under our clothes. The Hawkeye project was where people were drawing Hawkeye in the way female characters were drawn. Oh, I see, I see, I see. In ancient times, they didn't have HBO. That's true, right? Mathematical equation, human body, you believe in God? I mean, I do believe in God. But like the golden ratio thing in Greece was a mathematical thing that was based on stuff like Platonic ideals. The ratio was the golden ratio was phi, the Greek letter phi, and you could look that up. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into, like, you know, again, this proportional stuff, right? Like the basis of like how long the shin bone is to the thing, and you know, the femur is to the waist, and you know how broad the shoulders are, and all this stuff. You know, you just got a new topic for the round table. I don't know what that is. Like the golden ratio or sexy pottery. So, what would ancient HBO look like? That'd be a great one. I'd talk about that. Ancient HBO. So if we look at, interesting enough, now some science guys are saying time and space is an illusion and there's something outside of it. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff going on in the scientific world, right? Like, are we just are we what am I trying to say here? Like, are we a projection from some sort of hologram thing, right? Like that, I've heard that one, that because of the way that our universe is set up, we're actually a holographic projection, which, I mean, I can't disprove it, and I don't know enough about it to argue it, so. There's a lot of stuff out there. All right. Now, I do have this image. So if we go over to Pratihara architecture, I got a couple of photos that I can show you. I've been told it's turtles all the way down. Well, that is a pretty common one, and Sturgill Simpson said that. And, you know, Sturgill Simpson is a pretty smart dude in my book. So maybe it is turtles all the way down. Anyway, this is a particular temple at a place called Telikab Mandir. And this is actually built during the time period of our buddy Mihira Bhoja, the big, powerful ruler at the end that we talked about, that basically ended or began the end of the Pala Empire. We can get a couple of things out of this, and I'll show you a picture of this, and we'll actually go zoom around on it a little bit when we get over to the other thing here. But there are a couple of things that are pretty indicative of the architectural type that the Pratihara used. These lots of stacked rectangular structures, these layers and things. You'll see this in a lot of their architecture. Also, these big bases where everything is sort of built up off the ground. That's a very common stylistic element in their stuff. So I have added an interesting new scene, which is full screen Google Earth. So we're going to zoom in here and look at this particular temple, Telikab Mandir in Gwalior, because I checked prior to the stream and I discovered that we can do the old Google Earth on the ground here. Bum, ba-da-bum. It is a shrubbery. But here is the temple. Pretty cool stuff. So bland, you think they could have added a bit more detail, right? I mean, it's just so basic. Like, who would want a temple that's just this, you know, this tiny and so under decorated? I'm trying to get right up here on the doorstep. All right, so we can see here again that we've got some of our rather suggestive figures here. Maybe I need to take one step back so that we can kind of look up. Still not the greatest. There we go. A little bit better. Still not the best. But anyway, here we go. That's a pretty cool view of the things, right? Uh, Lots of decorative patterns. We've got these sort of fake uh, dome-shaped structures here. This sort of stubby roof is another kind of pratihara thing that's pretty common. It's because 3D space may be an illusion because of all the data to describe it could potentially be coded on a 2D surface like the event horizon of a black hole. Oh, thank you, Vipers. What's up, Raveland? Good to see you. I think you know that one on the left. Yeah. So this is pretty neat. And again, we can walk all the way around the outside of it if we want to. And look at all the different sides of it. But you can tell, like, this is a pretty cool location. Lots of great decoration. Really cool stonework here. Really, really fancy stuff. So that is Teli Ka Mandir. And a good example of Pratihara architecture. Ooh, I get way around. There we go, north. Now, what about the Pala? What are they like culturally speaking? Well, they were a group of Buddhist rulers, but they had a mostly Hindu population. So you might think that this caused a lot of tumult, but they're actually very, very tolerant. So Buddhist ruling structure over Hindu population. And the reason this is particularly interesting is because around the same time, this sort of middle to late 800s, we're seeing a lot of motion where Hinduism and Buddhism are kind of having this interesting synergy moment where a lot of things from Hinduism are crossing over into Buddhism. And we talked about this a little bit when we talked about Tibet. We talked about this a little bit last week when we were talking about Nanjiao. And this is sort of the beginning of Vajrayana Buddhism. So Buddhism started in India, left and got around to China, and then sort of came back around to India. And by the time it got back around to India, a lot of people started kind of readopting some Hindu stuff. And this is going to be with an interesting mix of what counts as scripture. A lot of the Buddhists are going to claim that the only scripture that is Buddhist is the Pali Canon that was supposedly written by the followers of Buddha. This is going to be very, very strict Buddhism, the Theravada version of Buddhism. The one that's popular in places like China and Japan is Mahayana Buddhism. But this interesting little mix of stuff, and especially this is going on kind of right over here in this pocket where we had the Pala Empire, and we have the Tibetans, and we have the Nanjiao, who are, well, actually kind of a little bit more over this way. But anyway, sort of generally this region, you've got this interesting mix of Buddhism and Hinduism that's going to produce a new version of Buddhism that is called Vajrayana, right? So that's where the earliest kind of roots and elements of this stuff is where you're going to start seeing it kind of pop up. So the Earth is really flat. You thought we were geoguessing. What's up, Dame Karen? Good to see you. I have done GeoGuessr a few times. It's just very frustrating. I don't like not being able to figure it out. If you can pan down a little, you can see one of the places where Buddhism was dominant. Oh yeah, so Southeast Asia was pretty Buddhist, and this part of India, again, so the Pala Empire rulers were Buddhist, but the people, especially as they expanded more this way, were going to be significantly Hindu in population. Now, for art stuff, they're going to be pretty interesting when it comes to their sculpture because they're going to be really good at stuff that's like casting bronze. So this particular piece right here is a statue of Buddha, and it's referred to as the Sultanganj Buddha, and I think this is in the Metropolitan Museum of Art now. Or I might be wrong, I can't remember. But anyway, this is a cast bronze statue. And this is going to be pretty indicative of Pala art. They're going to be really big on this sort of bronze sculpture stuff. Fairly true to form. fairly realistic in style. So pretty interesting stuff here. Sri Lanka was where you were thinking. Oh yeah, so Sri Lanka, of course. Racha. Well, we talked a little bit about the Chola. I don't know if you were here when we were talking about the Chola. So we mentioned some of the Tamil peoples, and we'll talk about them just a little bit here. It's actually very similar with the traditional Baphomet pose. I wonder if that inspired it being the other. So this particular pose of like the one hand up and one hand down thing, that's so ancient. It's not really anything that can be attributed to any modern religion. This is so ancient stuff. This goes back to like the first time we were figuring out religion. You can see statues like this from Mesopotamia in the 3600 BC range. I know that the modern sort of, I can't remember which one it is that's the good one, but the modern Baphomet images are just an amalgamation of a whole bunch of different articulations and artistic poses that have been around forever. I would say absolutely. Anything that's coming out of the modern Satanist movement has been inspired by lots of different art and art and forms and styles of the past. You really look at the world like Star Wars. The world is crap, but there seems to be something spiritual. So there's a force that holds us all together. Hey man, if it works for you, make it work, right? So, it is what it is. Now, the Pala are also going to be pretty big into building temples, but they're going to be much more into using bricks. So this is at a place called Kannauj, and this is a big temple to Shiva. The picture is very old. Let me tell you why I use this older picture. I use the old ones because there have been a lot of renovations done to this temple, and today they have it plastered over, and you can't tell that it's brick underneath. So I wanted to find a photo that specifically showed that this is constructed out of clay bricks. So I had to go back and find a really old picture. You can find modern pictures of this temple, but it's like sort of like a blood red, and they've plastered all of it over, so you can't tell that it's actually made out of brick. This picture is from 1875, so I had to do some digging to find it. Girl Forest, welcome. Good to see you. So they built these big temples out of brick, which is pretty impressive itself, because that, takes a lot of engineering to get shapes and forms and stuff like that out of brick without them all crumbling. Because there's only so much tension that you can put on a brick before it just turns into dust, right? So, pretty cool stuff. Okay. What about the Rashtrakuta? Now, when we talk about the Rashtrakuta, again, they're down here in the southern part, or southern central part. We don't really know a lot about the ruling family. Let me rephrase that. There is a lot of debate among historians about the religion of the ruling family. Some people say that they were Hindu. Some people say that they were Jains. It could have been that they were different at different times, like certain rulers were more Hindu and certain rulers were more Jains. But we really don't know, because they seem to be very, very tolerant religiously. If you look at the buildings and the temples and the monasteries that get opened during sort of the Rashtrakuta period, they don't seem to favor one religion over the other, which means that they were either patronizing all of the different religions, or they didn't really care who built what, which is kind of interesting, because in India at this time, you're usually going to see like a dominant religion and then sort of subservient religions. Like again, in Pratihara, our rulers are going to be Hindu, and they're going to be Hindu. Now, they had Jains and Buddhists there, but they were Hindu, and everybody knew we're Hindu. If you go over to the Pala, their rulers were Buddhist. Everybody knew that. But when we get to Rashtrakuta, it's like, what are they? We don't really know. But they did seem to be pretty tolerant overall, which is pretty cool, right? Can you ask if you have seen the ancient relics of giants depicted as holding lions? Yeah, you can't look at ancient art in the past and go, those people were giants. I don't think that there were giants. I think that there might have been people that were 6.5 or 7 foot tall, but they were rare. And I don't think that there was like a race of ancient giants that were super big and powerful that did a whole bunch of stuff. I think all of that is artistic license. And because people in the ancient world didn't have things like neonatal vitamins and good solid nutrition when they were kids, they didn't grow very big. Average person back then might have been, 5'3", 5'5". So you get somebody that's 6'5" or 7 foot tall, which we all know that the human body can achieve. Even today, we have 7 foot tall people, right? They look like giants because they kind of are giants. But the situation here is art is not reality. Art just reflects reality, right? And you see a whole bunch of mythological figures. Like we can go to Greece and find any number of depictions of Minotaur, but do we actually think that there were Minotaur? We can find any number of artistic pictures of, one-eyed cyclopses, but do we think that we really had cyclopses? So the big humans thing is just a big humans thing. Some people did it to impress a particular idea. Like there's a guy, one of the first humans that we know was a real person that did this kind of thing was a guy named Naram Sin from Mesopotamia, who on several different stela drew himself about 3 times taller than all the other people, and he put himself wearing the headdress of a god. And he did this because he was trying to show everybody that he was big and powerful and beat the crap out of all of them. So, I mean, the concept of deification or drawing me bigger to be bigger is very, very common. We see this like in Egypt. There's a big... this happens in Egypt a ton, but like specifically, there's a big picture of the battle at Kadesh, and on it, Ramses is about 2.5 times taller than all of his other soldiers, and that's because he said that he saved the day, and like it was his glory and the strength of his bow and his chariot that won the day, and he was just trying to be the big dude. Ramses wasn't 3 times taller than everybody else. If there were a whole race of ancient giants, we would have had a lot more actual evidence. We would have found, skeletons that are larger. We would have found some sort of evidence of tools that were for a specific reason that were twice the size. We would have, bowls that were as big around as our arms and stuff like that. So, I'm not really down with the Anunnaki ancient giants thing. Sri Lanka's a bit like that, celebrates everyone's holidays. Yeah, that's pretty cool. They weren't giants, but there were small lions. Yeah, maybe the lions are just very tiny. They're like little pocket mustard. It's hard enough to proportion scale right with an undo button. Right. Hydrocannabinoid, what's up? I don't know what the reference of the Dutch was to. But it's just like randomly scrolling back through the chat. Just the Dutch. Welcome, Hydrocannabinoid. Welcome in. Hope you're having a good one. I would love to go to Greece. And Moose, if you ever want to go to Greece and you need a tour guide that you can pay for, and you want to go during the summertime, I will totally plan the trip, do all the driving, and do all the tour guiding. Just get me over there, and we'll be good. Here's another picture of a person and a lion. Not exactly realistic. Oh, man. Oh, what is that lion? That dude has seen some stuff. Oh, that poor lion. One-eyed, one-horned, flying purple people eater, right? or even the rare two-eyed cyclops, right? The biclops, right? Cave the biclops. You want to do a paper on whether minotaurs were real or not? That's a double mutation. Rumor has it that this is why Napoleon looked short. The artist had the opposite view of him. Yeah, Napoleon wasn't short. He was about average height for the time. He was just 3 times closer, so it's a forced perspective, right? Would a two-eyed cyclops be a human, or would their eyes be vertical? Yeah, that's a great question. Would they have, like, 2 eyes like this, or would it be... the Sphinx isn't actually a petrified human-lion hybrid? No, they're not. They're not. Oh, the Dutch are tall. Okay. I have not been to India. I would absolutely love to go to India, though. I would love to go to India. There's so many cool places over there. Strangely, they didn't pass that on to the Dutch burgers. Found so many pictures of messed up looking lines. Yeah, there's a lot of them. All right, so what about Rostradica? So again, their religion is very, very tolerant, very broad. We don't know exactly what the rulers were. They had a lot of different stuff going on. They seem to be very, very tolerant. But we do know that they have some really friggin' cool art stuff, like this. This is the Kailasa Temple, and we're about to go there on Google Earth. But I wanted to show you this photo of it from this particular angle because I want to explain the artistic feat that is this particular temple. This whole temple is carved fully out of the mountain. This is ground level, and they just decided we're going to carve an entire temple full form out of the mountain. So this is all one piece of rock, and it's the same piece of rock. Absolutely crazy amount of work that this goes into. I would guess that this is some type of granite. I don't know exactly what the hill is made out of, though. That's a fair question, Grow a Forest. It's a fairly hard, dense rock, but I don't know. I'm sure that if you looked up the temple, you could figure it out. It is... Kailasa Temple. And because I checked ahead of time, we're going to go look at that here. Because we can go walk around it. So did they build a temple or did they build a pile of rubble? No, and we can see it a little bit better here. So this is the mountain, right? You can see the elevation drop right here at the edge of the mountain. And they just decided to dig this out of the mountain. Oh, so it's volcanic rock, so maybe basalt. Maybe so. But you can see the temple here, literally just like bloop, 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 chunked out of the mountain. But again, because Google Earth is amazing, and I'm going to start checking pretty much everything ahead of time from now on, we can go walk around and look at this. So again, this is just awesome. Super impressive. And we can see... Oh, wow. Why do we do that? We don't want to go that way. Can we... Oh, maybe I need to just hop us a little bit forward. Maybe we're in a 3D picture. There we go. Okay. So you can just see how much work went into this. All of these bas-reliefs, all of the detail work. And when we get inside, it's even cooler because you have these courtyards. And again, they all of this is removed stone, right? They carved all of this out of the mountain, just completely popped it right out. So all of these side temples and chambers and stuff, this whole elephant, let's go over here and look at the elephant. The trunk is missing. But this elephant was carved out of the bedrock. So this is all the same stone. And I keep saying that again and again and again, but holy crap, this is super impressive. I love looking at this kind of stuff. This would be like, if I were to go to India, this would be among the things that I would be particularly excited about trying to go see. And And we can walk around up here, check out all of this other stuff. We can go walk around, look at all these different statues of, here's a Shiva. By they, I presume you mean slaves. There was some slavery here, but most of this would have been paid work. I don't think that this would have been a whole bunch of slaves. You don't have slaves that are going to be this skilled artistically either. I mean, just I wish I could zoom in on this, but this is so tiny detailed. Anyway, if you want to, I will allow you to explore some of this on your own. But it is completely freestanding from the rock. It goes all the way around. You can go all the way around the back of it. Really, really fascinating place. And you can go inside of the main temple here as well. I don't think we did that. So let's go inside the main chamber here. And you can see, so this is inside of a temple. They carved all the way down, and then they made a hole, and then they carved all of this out. Can they replicate it? You mean, could they do it again today? I mean, I'm sure that they probably could if we wanted to. The issue would be trying to find somebody that you could pay to do it, because, I mean, this is a massive amount of work. But yeah, I'm sure that if somebody had enough money and enough will, they could make this happen again. Yeah, like if Jeff Bezos decided to, buy a mountain in California and dig a temple out of it to Amazon, he probably could make that happen. What's up, Junk Collector? Good to see you, my friend. We're actually wrapping up, which I know might be unfortunate because you just got here, but we have been talking about India and the three big empires during this time and the fight over a city named Kannauj, and then we did some stuff with their history and their art. Now, I didn't talk a lot about Chola culture. Again, it is sort of getting into the swing of things, and just because I think the Chola are cool, I did go grab this. This is a bronze cast sculpture of Shiva as a dancer. That's Chola. This is significantly later. I just wanted to show you where the Chola are going. Just crazy levels of artistic skill here. And again, this is single piece bronze casting. That's just amazingly skilled work. This is not from this time period. I did mention the Chola. I did want to show you a piece of their artwork. But, this is where the Chola are headed. I told you that would be one of the larger empires of the Southeastern Asian world, and I wanted to show you where they're headed. It's just all AI. Yeah, look at the arms. There's too many arms, and they come out of weird places. This is clearly AI. You can actually go see this one. I know for a fact that this one is actually at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Yeah, it's just got hands like growing out of hands and like random fingers that are sticking up at places. Much like the pyramids, I'd say they work together to literal death. Yeah, and this stuff wasn't built in a single person's lifetime, right? These were those temples so that temple structure is part of a larger valley of temple structures at a place called Ellora. Let me put that up here if you want to look that up. It's in the Ellora Valley in India. And these were put together over the spans of decades, right? So this is a lot of work that's very, very slow. It's not something that is happening in an afternoon or even a person's lifetime. So you need to drown your day in history and alcohol. Alas, Junk, I apologize. I mean, we can stay around and chat for a little bit, but I'm pretty much wrapped up at this point. Maybe this is why animals look so messed up in ancient art. This elephant carved entirely out of rock is going to look, oops. This lion, oh yeah, so they screwed it up and they just changed it into a different animal. Didn't Shiva ride chariots in the sky in the stories like UFOs? So you're talking about Indra, who has a chariot made out of clouds that he uses to transport people around. That's in the oh man, I think that's in the Rig Veda. I think that particular story is of a big battle in the Rig Veda where he uh, goes to one of the human princes and puts the whole army of the prince on a cloud and transports them to the battlefield so that they can defeat the enemy in time. Um, I'm pretty sure that's in the Rig Veda. I'm not 100% sure though. I could be completely wrong. I think Shiva surfed on tigers, maybe so. Even a slave or paid craftsman who got to excavate and see the result of their work had bragging rights. Absolutely, absolutely. What Indian religion is the most interesting to me? Oh, that's a great one. I like some of the denominations of Hindu because, again, Hindu is such a bad phrase. Hinduism is not one religion; it's like 7 religions. Um, so one of the types I like Ganesha, right? Ganesha is a really cool god to me, and the story of Ganesha is really funny, and he gets into stuff that's kind of funny. I find him really interesting. So there's a version of Hinduism that considers him to be sort of the primary god. It's called Ganyapatya, and I find that one pretty interesting. I really do like the Jain religion, though. They've got a lot of interesting tenets, and I find that to be really, really interesting. I like their concept of Tirthankar. So this is like a bridge building person who is sort of like a specially designated individual that gets reincarnated a whole bunch of times and is the person that reveals the true knowledge and bridges the gap between people and stuff. It's really cool stuff. I like the Jain religion. I mean, I don't dislike any of them. I really love studying religion. I really find it fascinating to see how people explain stuff. But I don't know. Like that's a hard question to answer. The artist James Turrell basically carved a mountain in the southwest of the USA to make an art piece. That's cool. You think that was Goku on the flying Nimbus? So Moose, you redeemed it twice. But anything other than trains or Marjorie Taylor Greene wanting to secede from the Union. Do you want 2 things? So I don't think Ganesha himself is funny. I think that some of the stories that Ganesha gets into are humorous on purpose. Like they're designed to be sort of humorous stories. I'm not trying to like say like we should laugh at Ganesha, but I think that like the stories that are around him have humorous elements, and it just kind of makes me like, hey, that's kind of cool. You know, a little smile, right? Jane says, the British, I assure, don't need to worry about Hinduism is fine. Yeah, the British came up with Hinduism. All this talk about religion, but what was the original? Okay, gotcha. You should totally laugh in the face of God. Maybe not. I don't know. Whatever you do, you. I can't tell you what to do. So 2 things about the news. I actually have something prepared for this because I was hoping somebody would ask. Let me get this opened. Let me get this going. Where's this image at? We're gonna open this image up. Open. There we go. So this happened today. In the United Nations. The United Nations held a vote to basically say that Russia was a jerk for invading Ukraine. And I want to publicly show everybody who decided to vote against it and who decided to uh, abstain. So, countries that said no, Russia is good for doing this. Belarus and Eritrea and North Korea and Mali and Russia, of course, and Nicaragua and Syria were all like, oh no, Russia's completely justified. And then you have a whole bunch of people down here that decided, you know what, it's just this is not worth voting on. Algeria and Angola and Armenia and Bangladesh and Bolivia and Burundi and the Central African Republic and China and Congo and Cuba and El Salvador and Ethiopia and Gabon and Guinea-Bissau, India, Iran, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Laos, Mongolia, Mozambique, Namibia, Pakistan, South Africa, Sri Lanka, Sudan, Tajikistan, Togo, Uganda, Uzbekistan, and Zimbabwe all said, you know what, we're not going to go on record. We're just not going to go on record. What's up, Bob? And you like India? Cool. I really like India as well. We just spent about an hour and 40 minutes talking about India. I need to cough. Sorry about that. I was drinking tea and trying to talk at the same time, and it kind of went down the wrong pipe. Bum ba dum, dum da dum dum, dum da dum dum dum. Bob, thank you so much for that follow, and welcome to the adventure. India is buying a lot of fuel that can be sold in Europe. India's doing a lot of stuff right now, but the reason I wanted to show that is it's pretty obvious, and it should be pretty obvious, that there's no justification for Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Ukraine is a sovereign nation that has a independent history and culture, and this should be internationally recognized. This should have been a slam dunk. It should have been everybody saying, yes, Russia is wrong, and then probably Russia saying, no, we're right. But the fact that so many people voted against it and so many people just decided not to vote, it's kind of troubling, right? This is one of these things where politics is trumping objective truth. And it's bothersome and worrisome, right? So, except I would have figured Turkey would have voted back. Yeah, pretty much. Same. And selling some of it back to Europe, correct. I'm not aware of the relationship between Russia and Mali. I think this is potentially something more along the lines of Mali's connection to maybe China and China's particular opinions about this. Now, Russia has been doing some outreach in Africa. Their Secretary of State did a big tour of Africa a few weeks ago. I can't remember if he specifically went to Mali or not, but I know that there has been a lot of PR that's going into Africa from Russia. And this is sort of at the lead of China, who has been doing a big PR push in Africa for about the last 15 years and has really only been recognized for this internationally in about the last 3 or 4 years, where people are recognizing that China is basically trying to buy Africa. I've been yelling about that for a while. The UN is just a mafia led by 5 chairmen who are fighting each other for territory and rackets at the moment. Ooh, that's a kind of a spicy take. I think the UN is mostly theater, but there are good roles and bad roles. Is India developing advanced medieval weaponry to give to soldiers on the border who are going to be allowed to have guns like China is doing? India made some pretty wicked ancient guns back in the day. That's some pretty cool stuff. Very unique weaponry in India, but I don't think that they're going to end up giving it to Russia like China's probably going to do. But fascism, right? I do not live in India. I live in America. I'd love to visit India, but I've never been there. You can't imagine the French would be happy about that development in Mali. Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, Dame Karen. The issue with the French in Africa is that they have burned so many bridges since the 70s that it's surprising that anybody inside of Africa still lets them in the door. The French did so many horrible things in Africa. Doesn't China own a remarkable amount of ports and port cities in Africa? They do own some ports, technically speaking. So one of the things that China has been doing rather surreptitiously is investing a lot of money in kind of these new corporations. And some of these corporations that they have in partnership with African companies have been building ports. And the money from this is clearly coming from China. And China has the right to operate in these ports with special privilege. There is some... It's economic colonialism. It's exactly what KP said, right? It's pretty clear that what China is doing is using its giant stack of money as a way to take over parts of Africa. I'm not trying to hide that. In some cases, the African countries do still have a substantial holdings in that particular situation. Like there's a big port that just opened in Nigeria, right? That was built mostly by Chinese money, that's owned partially by Nigerian companies. Theoretically speaking, the Nigerians could stand up to the Chinese and sort of push them out. Whether or not that's going to happen is problematic because ports take a lot of money to operate and they take a lot of upkeep and they take a lot of renovation and kind of stuff. And even though Nigeria is what I think kind of on the border of being a global power, I don't think Nigeria has enough money on hand right now to keep stuff like that going. So I doubt that they'll shirk the Chinese money when China's making so much off of it. China's also doing a lot of stuff like building power plants and building roads in Africa. So be aware of that stuff. Yeah, own isn't the right... Like, they're joint owners or co-owners in a situation, but I don't think they just own it outright. Braveland is going to head out to lurk. All right. Kaliasa is what we looked at that just a second ago. And Tuna just shared the link there. Is China planning to claim ownership of African land next? I don't think that they'll ever go that far. It's not outright colonialism. They're not going to plant a Chinese flag there and say this is a colony of China. It's more of an economic thing. They're going to get them hooked on the Chinese money, and then they're going to effectively take them over that way. Which is one of the reasons why I think that the West has been really, really ignorant and ignoring Africa for way too long. It's turned into a place where you go if you want to talk about AIDS, and it's turned into a place where you go if you want to make yourself look good by comparison. But Western policy on Africa, and especially the last 20 years, has just been atrocious. We have effectively ignored them in ways that has made Africa turn to China. And even in stuff as basic as, COVID vaccines, right? When the companies that were producing COVID vaccines or trying to distribute them, the Western countries bought a lion's share of those doses just to stockpile them. And there were more doses of vaccine wasted in America than some African countries got total, right? And it's just that kind of activity that we do that sort of tells African countries that we don't care about them, that makes them look for friends like China in the first place. So, I don't know, man. I predict Africa will have several locations of manufacturing. I really do think so too, as well, Tuna. I think Nigeria is, and I'm not even joking here, like Nigeria is on the verge of something. They are a really big population. They have a really big chunk of territory. They have what is probably one of the more Christian populations on earth. Like there are almost as many Christians that are openly professed Christian in Nigeria than there are in Europe. Right? Like, it's one of the largest Christian nations on earth, and people don't know that about Nigeria. Not that I'm saying that that's going to make them successful, but I'm just saying, like, there's a lot more in common with Nigeria than a lot of people in the West think. They probably think, oh, everybody in Nigeria is either a Muslim or one of them, pagan people. If I asked people in my family, hey, what's the major religion in Nigeria? I bet none of them would say Christianity. But they have an industrial sector. They have a burgeoning cinema sector. They have a population that needs jobs. The biggest issue with Nigeria is, especially up here in the northern parts, is water. And the government is just, they can't figure out how to make democracy work. They're still doing that thing where it's kind of like, we'll have a vote, but when I win, I'm going to use all of the power to kill everybody that was my enemy. And it's just not they've adopted democracy, but they haven't adopted the pluralist model where it's okay to have different ideas. So, sanctions on many countries because of former. Yeah, exactly. We don't ignore them. Plenty of white American Instagram girls went to Africa and took pictures. Yeah, yeah, and see, that's where I was getting to. Tuna is like you end up getting voted in, but then you basically become a dictator, right? And you use the power that you got to do whatever you want to. So they're democratic in nature, but you don't believe in democracy. I mean, not everybody has to. Historically speaking, not everybody is a fan of democracy. It's a fairly new religious structure. It has not been used in a lot of places over the course of time. Not everybody does it the right way in a way that it works. So, I mean, there's a particularly sizable portion of human history where democracy is not even considered to be legitimate. So, I mean, I'm not going to argue about that. I don't think it's fake. I think that there is something called democracy. I think what you're saying specifically is that you don't believe that people actually have the right to vote and that it's probably rigged by some government. No, I mean democracy is literally fake. Okay, wow, that's really interesting. I don't know how they would fake that. That would have to be the biggest conspiracy of all time. Pure democracies don't exist. Well, nowhere does pure democracy. That's true. Nowhere does pure democracy. Most people that have democratic processes are of the Republican structure, where you vote for somebody that is your representative that goes on to vote for you, right? I mean, America is theoretically democratic, but golly, they'll make it look near impossible. So, well, that's true. There are a lot of places where it's becoming more difficult to vote, where there are structures that keep people from voting. Yeah, except for American Idol, right? You can go vote for American Idol. Call in your vote, and charges may apply, right? Democracy as a religious structure. What's the biggest city in India? Oh, wow, I don't actually know that. That's a good question to Google. Mumbai. 12.7 million people. Holy crap. Mumbai is the largest, 12.7 million people. Delhi is the second largest. Delhi is the capital, and that would have been my guess, but it's got 11 million people. Bangalore, holy crud, 5.1 million. Kolkata, 4.6 million. Chennai, 4.3 million. Ahmedabad, 3.7 million. Hyderabad, 3.5 million. Pune, 2.9 million. Those are big cities in India. Holy crud, those are some big cities in India. India does have a lot of people. Yeah, Mumbai has a higher population than Greece. It's got a higher population than the city, than the state that I live in. Yeah, so one city, more people than the state that I live in. Does anybody else have any other redemptions or anything like that? Moose, I do owe you another thing in the news, or would you like me to refund one of those? I mean, I could always talk about something else that's in the news. Oh, you refunded it already. Okay, cool. And Bob wants to see the puppy. All right, let me call the puppy. Well, let me call the puppy. Apparently the puppy was asleep on the couch. Just because a country says that it's a democracy, it isn't so. China, North Korea, Russia. I don't think it's fair to put U.S. in the same categories as China, North Korea, and Russia. There are substantially more transparent processes of democracy in America than there are those other three countries. Let me call the puppy again because I don't know if she's coming this way or not. I don't know what she's up to. Yes, I do have a dog, and that is the summon the puppy reward. I think she was probably looking for a toy, and I suspect that she'll come walking in here with a toy. Oh, she does have a toy. Come here. Come here. Oh my goodness. You have a toy. It's a very cool toy. You want to come and see? Come here. Come here. Come here. Come on. Come on. Come on. Hey, come here. Come on. Come on. There you go. There's the puppy. There's the puppy. Hello. What are you doing? You play with the toy? Let me tilt this around because she's over here. Want to play? Arr. 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 This is one of her favorite toys. It is the tug of war toy. Arr. Arr. You want to catch it? Let's see if we do a catch. Nope, not going to do a catch. But now you're going to go away. But are you going to go away? Do you want to bring it back over here? Or are you going to come over to this side? Nope, you're going to leave. She doesn't like it when I have to take the toy from her to get her on the stream, so she usually takes her toy back and runs away. You don't think so? I mean, that you're free to think whatever you want to, my friend. I don't think that is. I think that the elections in America are substantially more transparent than any election that anywhere in China or North Korea or Russia has ever had. And you're not throwing points into the void. I've already stated that we're going to consider the opinion hat stream finished when we get to 60K, or I'm sorry, 600K, instead of 1 million, because everybody's running out of points. So we're most of the way there. We've got like, I think 40,000 points left or something like that. So it's not throwing it into a void. That's going to happen, and I've even cut it down. The reason I can't change it is because like the way that Twitch has things set up, you can't alter the amount that people donate, and you can't alter how much the total is. You can just spend yeah. See, that's the thing. But I recognize that was a lot longer than it needed to be. I thought I would do that and it would, people would stop donating to it. Because they would just be like, oh, I don't actually want to hear this. But then people just kept on it. So, I guess people really just want to hear my opinions. Iran will kick the U.S.'s butt. I mean, maybe. I don't think so. They did admit today that they had enriched uranium to 84%, which was way higher than they were expected to do based on the treaties that America backed out of under President Trump. But I don't think that there's... if you just look at the stack up of American military versus Iranian military, the American military is about 4 times larger than the Iranian military, probably. They have substantially higher levels of technological skill. They have a lot more airplanes, way more stuff like aircraft carriers and naval power. Now the Iranians have a navy, but it wouldn't it wouldn't stand up to the United States Navy. I think that in a head-to-head competition, Iran would have a really, really hard time fighting America. Russia is sending weapons into Iran. Well, Russia isn't sending weapons into Iran because Russia doesn't have any weapons to send into Iran. Russia's sending money into Iran to get Iranian weapons. So they're sending them money to get, especially drones. And of course, Iran is saying, no, we didn't sell those to them after. We sold them to them before, but they're probably still selling them drones. And Russia would definitely love to make an alliance with Iran because Russia is trying to get into the larger oil cartel world and run a whole bunch of stuff that way. Yeah, Russia doesn't have enough ammunition to send to its own soldiers in Ukraine. One of the things that's been happening in the last 2 weeks is the guy that's the head of the Wagner group, which is effectively a mercenary group that's sort of part of the Russian military, has been publicly shaming the Russian government and military structure for basically undersupplying the Russian military. And the guy that is running the Wagner group posted several photos earlier today, or either last night over there, which was earlier this morning, or sometime earlier today, which was literally a whole big stack of dead Russian soldiers. And the caption was pretty much just like, this is what happens when you undersupply your military. And it finally shamed the Russian government into saying, okay, fine, we'll send you more bullets. So they maybe, but I think if that happened, there'd be a pretty big stink about that. Now, I know that Iran would love Su-35s and it would love some anti-aircraft missiles. I will admit to not being well read up enough on that to have an opinion. But I haven't heard anything completely about that. Trying to jumpstart their own military-industrial complex. Well, I mean, Iran's always had, well, not always. Since the Iranian Revolution took over and the Revolutionary Guard became sort of the de facto police of the Iranian country, they've had a pretty substantial military-industrial complex. So they're overstretched, but they can't back down because they're too proud. Oh, sure. I mean, if they back down right now without some sort of substantive way for Putin to claim victory, there would be a coup. Oh, the Wagner Group? Oh, so Wagner Group is in a lot of the places that are having the heaviest amount of fighting, like Bakhmut, the city in northeastern Ukraine. That's where a lot of the Wagner people are fighting, and they're not really in a position to be able to back down because they're on the front lines. So if they retreated, Russia would lose territory, and that would be that would be really, really bad, because then they certainly weren't going to give you any supplies if you're retreating. So they're sort of in a bad situation where they have to hold what they have because they're trying to save face. And they can't really run away or they'll get killed by other Russian troops who are killing deserters. But they also don't have enough ammunition to hold their spot. So there we go. All right. Okay, I think it's probably time for us to go do a raid. What will Russia do now? The same thing that they've pretty much been doing. What looks like there's going to be a big moment at some point in probably the spring where the Ukrainians are going to get all of these Western tanks in, which is probably like late March or somewhere around in there, right about the time that spring hits. And that's going to be a really telling moment. One of the reasons Russia is pushing so hard right now to try to take territory is because they know that they are kind of running out of time on the technological edge that they have, especially with tanks. The Ukrainians have already proven to be incredibly good at shooting down their drones. There's even a Ukrainian model drone jammer that a company in Ukraine has developed and is producing for the military. That's basically like a remote shutdown. It's kind of like a laser gun looking thing, and you just kind of point it at the drone, and it overwhelms the drone with radio frequencies, and then the drone just, because most drones are programmed to basically land if they lose contact, and the Ukrainians have been shooting down the vast majority of drones, and because of the missile systems that they've been getting, they've been shooting down a lot more of the missiles that Russia has shot in. So really the only place where Russia is still holding a technological advantage is in things like armored vehicles. And when Ukrainians get access to Leopard tanks from Germany and from Abrams tanks from America, that's going to have a lot of sway. They're getting like 200 tanks, and it's going to be a lot more than just 30. And the Russian tank factories can produce as many tanks as they want to. They don't have anybody to put in them. The Russians are running out of soldiers without really starting to kick up a draft. The Wagner group that's fighting on the front lines right now is about 80% recruited soldiers that came out of Russian penal colonies and prisons. They're promised freedom for going to fight on the front lines, and they're dying with enormous casualties. Russia would have to actually start drafting its own Russian citizens, which it does not want to do. The big draft that went out earlier, or the later part of last year, was mostly rounding up ethnic minorities in the big cities. So that 300,000 troops that Russia said that Putin said that he was going to collect were actually mostly minority ethnic groups that weren't Russian. There were some native Russians there, but a lot of that stuff that was going on was done way out in the eastern part of Russia and along the border zones. Russia doesn't want to actually start drafting people in Moscow. That would look really, really horrible, and the optics of that are just really bad for them. Catching up with chat. Putin can't run away with his tail between his legs. Yeah, he just won't do that. Yeah, the Russians are surrounding Bakhmut right now, but that has halted because of the lack of ammunition. The U.S. are not sending troops. The U.S. are training some Ukrainians in America. They're also training some Ukrainians at UN sites. And there are some people that have formerly been in the military or formerly been in the American intelligence agencies that have volunteered for the Ukrainian Foreign Legion. So there is some work that's been done by Americans in Ukraine, including fighting, but that's not sanctioned by the government. That's an individual that used to be in the military in America or that used to be in the intelligence services that is going over to Ukraine and volunteering that stuff. Yeah, exactly what, I mean, KP already just said that. They're volunteering to serve with official 0% use backing. Russians are still using Cold War tanks. They are. And I mean, the Ukrainians are running out of theirs too as well, though. It is. Russia does not want to start another draft, especially... I should have just let KP talk. I don't know. I think the Ukrainians need more weapons than they're getting right now. I mean, they certainly are outnumbered, but when it comes to being outgunned, that's becoming less of the issue. Now, I would say that they would take whatever we would give them, for sure, and do so happily. But the casualty rates are so staggeringly lopsided that Russia's numerical advantage and gun advantage is not as powerful as it seems, because these people are not soldiers. They're getting the bare minimum of training. Some of these people are getting 1 day's worth of training to use a rifle and being sent to the front lines. So they're not trained soldiers, and the Ukrainian military at this point has a lot of veteran experience because they've been fighting this now for a year. And even if they're outnumbered and, like, literally, if you just count like how many physical guns are there outgunned, they're doing a lot better at holding their territory than Russia is doing at taking their territory. Vern, what's up, my man? How's it going? Good to see you. Welcome. Hope you're doing well. They do need more than they're getting, but what they're getting is far from nothing. Correct. What's up, Alchemist? What happened to the Chechens? Did they just pack up and leave? I remember when Kadyrov sent in a couple thousand guys a few months ago. So the Chechens are still there. And this starts getting into internal Russian politics, and it's very, very messy. because not everybody inside of the Russian military is super excited to fight alongside of Chechens. They still remember, the Chechen rebellions and things like that, and a lot of people, especially in the Russian command structure, still see Chechens as liabilities and as traitors. So they're not really getting along very well with the other parts of the Russian military. So they're still there. I just don't know if they're getting any assignments that are sort of getting them in the spotlight. And it was reported they just did leave. Okay, thanks, Junk Collector. Who's reporting these mass Russian casualties? The Ukrainian government? No. So there are people on the ground that are doing this, that are international individuals. Russia's actually having to starting to admit that there are a lot of things going wrong, which is, of course, not what they want to do. But it's fair to say that Ukrainians are reporting that they have done a lot of damage. I wouldn't say that we can 100% trust their numbers, but when you look at the numbers that are being reported by external agencies, especially external countries that have really big intelligence agencies that have people on the ground watching this stuff, the numbers that they're reporting aren't dramatically far off from what the Ukrainians are reporting. The Ukrainians might be reporting 25 to 30, maybe 35% over what's actually happening. But even if they're 70% accurate, they're still taking a big toll on the Russians. When the one with the rifle gets killed, the one who follows picks up the rifle. Right. Thought you would be done. Glad. I thought I would be done too, but we've had some good chat, so we've hung around. Zelensky is really pushing for fighter jets. Correct. The West is wary of giving weapons for attacking Russia. Bad optics. Well, that's true, especially when the Russians have been using their fighter jets to do what is basically fly up to the border and shoot missiles into Ukraine and then fly away kind of tactics. The Americans, and especially the Western people, they're not ignorant to the fact that what they're doing is keeping the Ukrainians in the fight. Right? They're not ignorant to that. One of the big issues with sending them tanks was, can we train them enough to make the tanks useful, and also, are they going to have the parts to repair the tanks? Because if I give you a tank, I'm not just going to have to give you a tank. I'm going to also have to give you stuff to maintain the tank. And if you don't have enough stuff to maintain the tank, you're going to use it for a month, and then it's going to be sitting in a pile because, it doesn't have anything to do. You don't have any parts to fix it. That goes especially double for fighter jets, because especially the stuff that they're looking at sending, third or fourth generation fighter jets, are super technical. So many computer systems and lots of upkeep, and Western countries are rightfully worried about whether or not the Ukrainians can maintain these jets. They don't want to necessarily send them to the Ukrainians and have them used once or twice and then have to sit because they can't keep them running. And I understand that. You kind of have to think of, what is my defense going to look like if I give these away? So there's a certain amount of preservation that has to be applied there. I'm not saying that we should send everything to Ukraine that they ask for, but it would make a significant difference if the Ukrainians could get the planes, learn how to use them, and maintain them. But that's a big question mark, right? We don't know if they're going to be able to do that. I think people are underestimating Russia. They have a lot of manpower, and they're training up more in the Ural Mountains. Well, sure. I mean, they've got a big population, but big populations don't automatically win wars. Big populations aren't always motivated to fight. Just because you have a bigger population doesn't mean you're automatically going to win. Or Russia would have done better in World War I, right? Or Russia would have taken Afghanistan, or Russia would have beaten Japan, or just because you have a big old population doesn't mean you're going to win. America had a million times well, not a million, but hundreds of times the population of Vietnam, and lost miserably there. America lost in Afghanistan. America did not accomplish its goals in Iraq, and we way outnumbered them. Putin is not known for quiet, right? Russia's population is 150 million.
If a tank breaks down, it stays put. True. Right. If a jet breaks down, it drops. True. What's up, Blue? Good to see you. How's it going? On top of maintenance, Ukrainians are going to have to be trained. Yeah, and teaching you how to use this stuff is not an inconsequential part of the decision. I'm so far behind in the chat. To be fair, everyone loses in Afghanistan. Everyone in the modern era loses in Afghanistan. Not everybody loses in Afghanistan, but a lot of people do. That's fair. All right, let me see who's around to raid. I think I'm actually going to go ahead and do a raid right now. My voice is getting tired. I've still got to teach 3 hours tomorrow. But we've had good conversation, so I don't mind that at all. Who all is streaming right now? Okay. All right, I see where we're going to go. We're going to go raid the Damage, who is a fellow lover of history and is an artist, does a lot of fantasy art, does a lot of character art. I know, Blue, I'm sorry. It's not because you just showed up. It's because I've been streaming now for almost 2.5 hours, and I can feel my voice getting a little thing. No, don't feel bad. Don't feel bad. If anything, I feel bad about leaving as soon as you got here. You should never feel bad about showing up whenever you can. I know that people have lives and people have other stuff going on. Naval bases and Ukraine would have to be a member of NATO to make that happen, and Ukraine is not a member of NATO and is probably not going to be a member of NATO anytime soon. All right, so let's go raid the Damage. He's a great streamer, good guy. When we get there, our battle cry is adventure, and you can throw those lovely adventure hat emotes in the chat. Until then, we are going to have our next definite stream on Thursday next week. Of course, I always hope that I can find some time over the weekend to do some Gundam building. But I can't promise that because I just don't know. But anyway, I'll see everybody next time. Have a good one. Take it easy.